Today, I have the beautiful Terri Bowman on the Awaken Feminine podcast. She is a fellow Perthie, so we are in the same time zone. Welcome to the show, Terri.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Excited for our conversation because I know you do some amazing things. But first of all, I'll just love for you to just introduce yourself and just tell our audience, who you are and what you do.
Hi, my name is Terri Bowman. I was the founder and creator of the founder of the Brain Wellness Spa, and then after many years of developing a technique called the Positive Auditory Stimuli technique that changes brain behaviour, I then transferred all my work onto an app called Blissiree, so people could actually have affordable, life-changing mental health programs in the comfort of their home.
That's amazing. We'll jump into that a bit as we move on, but I usually love to just ask my guests this first question. And as you know, my podcast is called The Awaken Feminine. So I just love for you to give us a definition of, your definition of what Awaken Feminine is.
This is, I can only go on for me. My Awaken Feminine is actually is something that was very private. It was a private journey for me. I was actually walking in a world of oblivion. I remember saying to a colleague that I felt empty and meaningless. And I got to that age when in my mid-40s where I just felt like I was just going through life Groundhog Day. And then I actually had an experience that actually awoken me to a new purpose, a new life, a new possibility. And it just brought everything out in me that actually made me feel whole. It made me feel complete. It made me feel spiritually abundant, mentally abundant, physically abundant, and psychologically abundant. And it was a big journey for me to be awakened to that, but it was a lot of work that I did on myself. But it just gave me a whole new perspective on life, and it just really helped me grow as a person.
Thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful. And yeah, I really feel that part of the Awakened Feminine is, finding that completeness within you. Because I think a lot of people go around feeling, like you were saying before, empty and incomplete. So that's beautiful that you got to experience that awakening. Now, Terri, I want to ask you, okay, so in your introduction, did you create the Brain Wellness Bar? You were the director.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So can you talk a bit about that journey from, creating Brain Wellness Bar and then, going, oh, I'm going to put all my life's work into then this app. Like what brought that on?
So it's a big journey. So I'll start from where I started from. What actually happened is I actually went over to the United Kingdom and to Germany to study a specific kinesiology that helped with perception and beliefs. And so I was helping a whole heap of people trying to shift their mindset about the way that they viewed the external world and their internal world as well. And I found I was really quite gifted in that area, and I hadn't awoken at this stage, but I was on the pathway to it. And I actually remember working with a lot of people, and I remember actually thinking, I never had depression, I never had anxiety. I had the only anxiety I ever had was when I had to speak in front of crowds of 200 or 300 people. So I had anxiety. I got that anxiety before I went and publicly spoke, but I didn't suffer from mental illness, and I was very tolerant to stress, and I had a really kind of very strong mindset. Whatever I set myself out to do, I could do. And I remember working with people back in the early days. My journey started 17 years ago, like I said. And I remember working with people back in the early days. And what actually happened, I could see the pain on their face. So, they were suffering with emotional stress. They were suffering with misery. They were suffering with depression. they were suffering with their negative thoughts and toxic emotions, and I couldn't relate to it, but I could see the pain, but I couldn't relate to the internalization of what that pain was feeling like inside. And I kind of worked out that you can't relate to something that you've never experienced. And I remember sitting down, and I just called. It's actually, it was a spiritual awakening at this stage. And I remember sitting down, and I just called out and said to God, Spirit, whatever you want to call that life force that's out there, and I just kind of said, please help me understand what these people are going through. I just don't relate to them. And I just was crying out to better relate to these people that I was helping with, and within 6 months I ended up in a psychiatric ward suffering from a psychotic episode, and I had never had any mental health problems prior to that. But it was interesting. You should always be careful what you ask for.
Yes.
But I remember just crying out for it. And then I was actually then in a psychiatric hospital, and I was locked up for having a condition called, that wasn't diagnosed at that time, but it was a psychotic episode. And I remember being the shame of mental illness. I was so ashamed of myself. It was the shame, the amounts of medication that was put on, and just going into complete depression. And it was awful. It was traumatic. I had never been traumatized mentally before, and I'd never had so much shame. I was completely humiliated and shamed. And anyway, what actually happened was later on, the psychotic episodes kept developing, and it was actually later on diagnosed as a menstrual psychosis. So every time I had a period, I would actually have a psychotic episode. So It was 2 days before the onset of the menstrual cycle that it would actually then trip into a psychotic episode. I call it the gift. The gift. It was a gift. It was a gift of the problem, because every time I had a psychotic episode, I had to go out there and fix my brain, because when you have a psychotic episode, your brain really is in a bad way afterwards. But the level of depression, I got very suicidal. I got anxiety. I got panic attacks when I would talk to people. Say you and I remember meeting. I went to just a seminar, and a woman in the toilet started talking to me. I had a panic attack just talking to that woman. Yet I've spoken to crowds of 10,000 people, and I was that debilitated mentally. I contracted. I was actually in a really bad place, and so what I actually had to do is I didn't like the feeling, so I had to go in there and actually totally work on getting my brain back together. And through that, I learned how to actually heal people. So if that was my spiritual awakening, was actually walking down the path of people that were really mentally vulnerable. So then what actually happened was I was actually working one-on-one, because I could relate to people, and because I actually had to fix my own brain, I developed this technique that was actually helping people to recover from their mental illness. Then because of my experiences in a mental health hospital, it was actually a public ward, was so appalling. I wanted to develop a day spa for the brain. So it was actually like a day spa, but it was actually people come into a very nurturing, very supportive, very comforting and spiritually fulfilling environment. And so they would get well in a nice place. It wasn't clinical, it was just beautiful. But I wanted to actually have a global reach, because my mission is to end all suffering. So as much as I can, I want to end all suffering. And so that's when I actually put everything on and transferred everything onto the Blissiree app.
Wow. That is an amazing story. And I mean, what a mission to end world suffering. That's a big mission.
It's a bit
And
miserable.
yeah, and just just listening to you, it is like be careful what you wish for, right?
Yes,
But
yep, yep.
but it, like you said, it ended up being a gift because you were now able to relate to these people and now
Mhm.
help them. So I want to ask you, because you said you were able to heal people from mental illness. So do they actually get better, like from whatever mental illness that they had?
So what actually happened is we track and measure all of our the progress of our clients through their journey. And so we actually get people to fill in a comprehensive form that then goes in, and every 3 to 4 sessions that they have, we actually compare the results. So the first session, which when I had my physical business, we had to charge for that first session because I had staff that I had to pay for that. We actually had to charge for that. So that first session was a 98% success rate, and we've got all the data to change the way that person felt and how they responded and how they perceived. So that was a 98% success rate on the first session. What we found with the data that we actually we had is that that person was able to go through the program, and if they weren't on track, so by session 4, so that's after 3 sessions, they would fill in a progress report. If they weren't 30 to 40% improved, then that, to me, that wasn't on track. And so we would pivot from their treatment plan and then put them through another program that got them on track. And by session 14, which was only after 13 sessions, it's between the stats are between 80 and 90% recovery.
Wow, that's
Mm.
amazing.
So that's what we do, and we work with depression, complex depression, anxiety, panic attacks, OCD, PTSD, burnout, and stress-related illnesses.
Well, so past life I was a pharmacist. Not like a previous life, but I
Yeah,
mean like
yeah,
not like
yeah,
I
yeah.
was, yeah. So and I worked in the children's hospital. I've been to like the psychiatric wards in the hospital because I used
Yep.
to also do a lot of safety and quality work. And like you say, you go into there and you think, wow, like these kids are depressed, they've got, psychosis, they've got all these things. And yes, we need to protect them. So, there's not sharp edges and all those, but it's actually really depressing when you go into those wards
Mhm,
because,
mhm.
so like you said, you're like, how can anyone even, like, your environment actually makes an impact on your mental health as well. But
That's
you
right.
know when you're in the hospital and it's just like this dreary, like, you just want to like shrink and shrivel, right? So I just love
Mhm.
that what you've created is this place where they feel like they're at a spa, right? Like nurtured spiritually, like, in their whole presence. um so so when patients come, or patients come to you, I would assume if they are, complex depression, anxiety, PTSD, OCD, they possibly might, most of them be on medications.
Mhm.
So when they start your program, do you then slowly wean them off? Like how does that kind of whole
Okay.
process work? I'm, yeah, interested from like a, yeah, healthcare.
About 80% of people, that's a good question. About 80% of people are actually on medication when they come to us. I unfortunately, by the time people have gone down the route of psychology, psychotherapy, psychiatry, I'm kind of their last hope. Does that make sense? Because
Yeah.
I'm new, it's innovative, it's not mainstream. Working on the unconscious brain, not the conscious brain, is actually completely different to hypnotherapy, NLP, and all that. So what we do is, most people say to us, look, I'm on medication. Will that affect my treatment? And the answer is no. What we've got to do is get you above what the medication is currently getting you. and statistically, medication, helps some people, but doesn't necessarily help a lot of people. I've been highly medicated myself, and I got to a point where I felt blunted from the medication. And I had to work that out because so many people come to me and they're just blunted. And what actually happens with the work that I do, it works on your spirit, it works on your soul, it works on your meridians, it works on your chakras, because that's the whole complete person. It's not just your mind or your brain. You've got to work on all of that. And your spirit is what actually gives you your feelings. And when the medication blunts you, you spiritually become blunted and disconnected from other people. And that's why so many people do end up commit suicide when they're actually on medication, because they spiritually don't feel anybody. I need to have that experience because it was the most debilitating part of my journey outside of the suicidal thoughts, was the most debilitating part of my journey, because I've never felt so desperate and so needy. I remember ringing up people, and if they hung up on me and said, "Look, I've got to go," I was beside myself, because that was the only time I didn't feel, but I felt connected. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So we talk to people about, you go to your doctor and you wean off when you feel right, and your doctor says it's okay to wean off.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we actually get that whole picture of you, the complete mind, body, soul, spirit integrated and back into balance before we actually get you weaning off.
I love that. And thank you for mentioning that, that you actually ask your patients to go back to the doctor for the weaning part. After I left pharmacy, my whole view of medications and, how our healthcare system has changed quite dramatically. So I love what you do. But also, for anyone listening, like, you go speak to your doctor, healthcare professional, because but really, like, what I found, because I had postnatal depression, so I can relate in that, the first thing my doctor said to me was, "Do you want medications?" And being a pharmacist, I'm like, "No, I don't want medication." And I actually went out to find, well, she said, "Oh, well, then, let's put you to go see a psychologist." And I ended up going, she gave me a list, and I ended up going, "Oh, I don't want just a psychologist. I want like a life coach or something." I don't know. There was something within me that I'm like, it's not just like that, the traditional, conventional healthcare system. So I went there, and I also went to a Reiki master, which, for me was a big thing, being a pharmacist, super like scientific, evidence-based. And I'm like, I don't know why, but I just felt like I needed to go see a Reiki master. So, the work that you're doing, like, as you say, with the chakras, meridians, basically your whole being, is not just about the brain, is very important. And I want to ask you then, right? So my experience of Western medicine is that they are very like, Western medicine is the bee's knees, and that's the only way to get, get better and things like that. And I know from like, seeing patients and things, yes, there are some patients that do need medication, like you say, like just to get that edge so that they can function. But it is just a numbing mechanism. You need to get to the root cause. You need to, get rid of what was actually causing it, like, is a Band-Aid, right? So your patients that came to you and then they're better and they go to the doctor and like, "I'm weaning off my medications." Have you had any response from their doctors going, "What? Like, I've been seeing you for this long. You've had all these complex issues, like, mental health issues. Where are you going, and how are you getting better and weaning off medication?" Like, yeah, what has been the response from like the traditional healthcare system?
What I've got is we've actually got awakened doctors. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So there's some doctors that are awakened, and what they do is they've actually had a number of their clients come to me, then go back to them, and then they've been referred through. But we've got a body called APRA,
Mm.
And APRA doesn't like natural therapies.
Yes.
And so some doctors and psychologists, I've got some psychologists that refer to me, but they actually tell their patients not to, like they say, look, you can go to this place, but I'm just giving you the information, because if it gets back to APRA, they could get a warning for referring people to something that is not traditional mainstream medicine. So, so we actually have had different doctors over the time. What I'd like to say is that my work is actually evidence-based, and we've been published in a journal with our data. So we're actually, proven to actually do things. But the awakened doctors love what I do, but they're actually a bit cautious about sending people through. And what I like to mention to your audience, Chinese medicine was the first medicine. So Western medicine is the alternate medicine.
Yes, that is so true, but it's not recognized in this way in Western society.
No. I know.
Yeah. And I love that it is evidence-based, because I mean you collect all the data when you see your patients, so you obviously have that comparison to be able to be published. And I guess it's again, because it's not your mainstream, here's a medication, here's a surgery, or the usual, then it's still like people are still a bit, the traditional, very traditional doctors are probably like very like, but it's great that I think there's more awakened doctors now. There's more doctors that can see that, we need to take a holistic approach. It's not just Western medicine or just Eastern medicine, or, it's like, okay, how can all of these things work together to help a patient? And, and every patient is also different. So like you said before, some patients work really well with medication. Some, like, it just doesn't, it's not good for them. It actually, stunts them. So yeah, I'm just so like excited talking to you, because what you're doing is so amazing. So then, okay, so you've got your brain wellness bar helping all these, all your patients to, really recover from their mental illnesses. And then what sparked you to go, what sparked your mission actually? So, you started doing all these things, and then you're like, I actually want to end world suffering. And so I'm now going to put all my life's work into this app. So what sparked that?
Well, see, when I actually went through my mental illness, the suffering was the most debilitating. It's debilitating. And you can actually have a bad day. That's one thing. You can be miserable. Some people are addicted to their misery. That's another thing. But suffering to the point where you want to kill yourself and end your life is the cruelest, most debilitating. It is out there, shocking to deal with. I say to people, if you've got a bad foot, you can always chop it off. But if your brain is actually suffering, you can't get rid of the suffering out of your brain. It's torture. It's torture. And so what I wanted to do, I had a bit of a weakness in my business that I wanted to. Back many years ago, I thought about franchising, and that was going to be my global empire, and to end all suffering through that. But it's too long. It's really hard to get a franchise up. The model wasn't. I developed two businesses, like north and south of the river, and it was actually, the model wasn't working for me. So I actually transitioned onto an app and made my work more affordable. So it's actually like a third of the price, not even a third of the price, a quarter of the price of what it is to go through normally. And with the app, it's a global reach. So I can scale up, whereas with a physical business, to scale up was $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 every business, because it had to be a certain look, it had to have a certain furniture, it actually had to have certain artwork and certain pieces and all that type of stuff. And it was too expensive, and plus you couldn't quality control to my specifications. But the app, I can actually scale up, and because I can scale up on the app, it's the most affordable way to actually get your mind and your spirit really feeling amazing.
Mm. Can you talk a bit about the method that you use, that you've created to help people to recode their brain?
Okay. I love talking about this. I'm a bit of a brain geek, and I was actually telling somebody the other day, just this morning, actually, I had a meeting this morning, and for 17 years, I've been trying to work out what a trigger is. And in the world of psychology, a trigger is a response to something that's been traumatized or a stimulus from your past. What a trigger is a stress response to perception. So whenever I've said that to people, they go, "Oh yeah, that's right. It's a stress. Yeah, that makes sense." But it's actually really complex to work that out, because what I do is work on the cause, not the effect. And so I've written a whole body of work that actually works on reducing and eliminating everyone's triggers. So it's about calming the world down and getting people feeling safe. Most people don't feel safe, or their brains don't feel safe. And so the technique that I've actually developed is called the Positive Auditory Stimuli technique. And so what it does is it's actually, if you imagine I'm a computer geek, but a brain geek, and I'm writing programs. So I actually specifically write programs that actually reprogram the brain, and then I communicate that to the unconscious brain. It sounds a bit out there, but to me it's more normal than taking a pill. And that actually changes brain behaviour. It goes into the unconscious brain, and your unconscious brain is telepathic by nature. So I'm not talking about your conscious brain, I'm not talking about your subconscious, I'm not talking about your conscious mind, but the unconscious brain, which is your genetic brain or your automatic default brain, is telepathic by nature. So when you go into a room, you might walk up to somebody, say you went into a room and there was a group of people there, and you walked up to them and you went, "Oh no, that doesn't feel right." That's your brain communicating to that telepathic way of communication. So it's both spiritual, it's both energetic, and it's both quantum. So what actually happens is that automatic brain, there's a connective memory between your neurons, DNA, genes, and chromosomes, and your subconscious interacts with that connective memory, and in that process of that connective memory, your DNA, genes, and chromosomes is like your filing cabinet in your brain. It files all your memory away, and so your mind every 10 seconds is recording your external reality, and your brain is filtering and recording your internal reality. And those two realities actually get filed away. So when you think about the past, because the brain's not future-centered, it's actually past-driven. When you think about an experience, like you have an experience, if I have an experience with you at this moment, and I have a bit of an anxiety attack because I'm feeling a really bit nervous, your brain goes back into your brain, your subconscious goes into that interconnected memory, retrieves the files that actually support the feelings. That gets loaded into your loading programs, which actually load up into your synapses and your neural pathways. So my technique interacts with that connected memory and stops your subconscious collecting all ineffective files. So what actually happens is your brain stops going back into the bad memories or the bad filing cabinet or all the bad files, but all the good ones get left behind. It's so intelligent, but I spent 17 years developing this. So what actually happens over a period of time, you break free, and the pathways of learning or the pathways of behaviour, they eventually atrophy, so you don't go back into your old behaviour patterns.
Wow. That's really cool. Okay, so my question is, okay, so you've got your physical places where people can come see you, and then you've got your app, and your app was so that, is more more far-reaching, right,
Mm-hmm.
globally. Do you have data to say that, you know, which one would work better? I would assume that it would work better if people come and see you physically, or it doesn't really matter.
That's a really good question, because what we did before we actually put all my work onto the app, we actually went out there and trialed it. What actually happens with people actually doing the app, it's a 30% better experience than actually coming in face to face. So, and the reason being is when you come in face to face, what actually happens is you race from work, so you're stressed. So people used to come to us already stressed or had a bad day. The kids are playing up or something's going on. You come in, you're overwhelmed. You come in and do the session, and then what actually happens is you get out, you get woken up. So it's about a 20-minute consult, and then about a 25-minute session that you get. And in that session, you actually close your eyes, you listen to some really relaxing music, and then we all go ahead and reprogram your brain. When you get up, you're in a relaxed state. You're actually you're in a deep meditative state of relaxation. You get in your car and then you got to race home or race back to work. You can get triggered along the way. Whereas in the app, you can do the same work in the app, but what actually happens is it actually, if you do it at night time, it's got 8 hours to actually simulate and change your brain, no triggers. So you wake up and you're feeling so much more refreshed. I still see people one-to-one, but it's more complex, people that need individualized session plans, but it's more for the complex ones, you know, people that are actually either treatment resistant or they're really suffering and it's got multiple layers. So I see those, but the app really supports everybody else with that, but it's actually better result.
That is so interesting. I love it. And it
Mm-hmm.
makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it makes so much sense. Yeah, wow. Um, so yep, you see the more complex patients, because with your app, anyone can use it. It's not just if you have anxiety or depression, it's for anyone that wants to improve their life. Is that
Yes,
correct? Yeah. Okay.
that's right. So what we don't talk about is we don't talk about brain health. I really talk to people about mental hygiene. We've got personal hygiene. So if we don't bathe, people won't come near us because we stink. We've got dental hygiene. If we don't keep our teeth clean and everything, people don't come near us because we stink. If we don't have good mental hygiene, people don't come near us because we stink mentally. So it's about actually having really good mental hygiene. And what the app does is enables you to have beautiful mental hygiene every day at an affordable price, because we've got one section which is actually our membership section that's good for personal growth. It's good for it's good for mental growth. It's good for spiritual growth, and it's good for psychological growth. And so you can actually go onto that, and it's really affordable for 2 people to use that. It's only $30 a month. There's over 110 different audios. There used to be sessions that people paid $230 a session every time they come in and wanted them in the app. And that's really affordable. So $15 a month each. And you can just play it while you sleep, and you wake up and you have stunning days. You cope better, you remove your stress patterns, and you wake up feeling fresh. And you get into recovery sleep, which is actually your sleep hygiene, which is another topic. And then you've got your mental health, which is your emotional empowerment, which you can actually use at a really affordable price. So it's all about, you know, getting your mental hygiene into such a great place that the world out there is not bad. How we perceive it is the biggest problem. But there's not a bad world out there.
Yeah, exactly. I want to ask you this. So say for someone like me, okay, I mean, I do a lot of like personal development work and spiritual work, but there are always like triggers or things that I might not have, gotten to realize that there are triggers yet. So do people need to know what their triggers are for it to clear, or does it just do it?
Well, see, that's a really great question. What actually happens is because I've actually worked on a program that's actually a formula. It's actually a 14-step formula, and it goes through everything. So 10 sessions just works on your triggers. Does that make sense? So a limiting belief can trigger you. A inner critic, having an inner critic can trigger you. Your fears can trigger you. Your lack of acceptance can trigger you. Your negativity can trigger you. Your childhood perceptions or your childhood insecurities can trigger you. But there's a whole heap of things that could trigger you. So that's 10 sessions in that 14-step program. And then we've got 4 sessions that work on your default patterns of behaviour. And so with that, you actually break free from all of your stress responses.
That's amazing.
So you don't have to know, but it's like, if you mentioned I've spent 17 years, so when this becomes more mainstream, I'll be an overnight success. But I've been spent 17 years really working very hard, and I'm still working hard to help people get to their ultimate space where they just love life, and life loves it, because it's a spiritual exchange. Like you and life have got a spiritual contract. And so what it is actually getting you to a place where you feel just amazing, but it's been working out everything that goes into that one size fits all. If there's a situation where somebody is outside of the box, that's when I actually make some more work, and then I put that onto the app. So I'm constantly developing, and that's why I love working with complex people, because I've always had the mindset, you work with the hardest ones and then everyone else is easy.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. That's really cool. That's really amazing. So I know you said at the beginning that with your patients, after about 4 sessions, if they don't have 30 to 40% improvement, then they're not on track. So I guess, so when people come in, obviously you collect all their data and things like that. So when you use the app, I'm just really interested because I'm like, oh, I need to use this app. So with the app, do you have do people kind of write their own data and then they can compare, or how would someone know that they have had improvement after using your app?
So that's a good question. So what actually happens is the best thing about my app, this is what I love, you don't need a credit card to try it for free. So you don't have to put in your credit card and then worry about, if you don't want to sign up, then you've got to cancel it and all that type of stuff. So the emotional empowerment program, which is tracked and measured, that you do the first session, that's for free, and the effects last between 24 and 72 hours. Some people get a whole week out of, and you just feel like your brain's zen. So your thoughts are all neutral. Your brain slows down. You're not in that urgency. You feel like you've got more time, but your brain goes nice and quiet. And so you get into a place where we call inner peace. Some people get a little bit confused because chaos and inner peace can be really quite confusing when you go from one to the other. So then you actually, if you like that, you go into the emotional empowerment program, but you fill in the whole heap of data. So there's the DAS score, there's a pen worry score, the Rosenberg anger score, and the self-esteem score as well. That then, when you go to session 4, you have to fill in a comparison form. It's not the whole complete, but you've got to put in what your indicators are. That then compares. Then what actually happens is we get triggered, and if that's not on track, I've got doctors of psychology working on the app, and so they actually support or she actually supports the clients on the app. She's a doctor of psychology. And so there's free online chat support, and then you can have a paid virtual session with her.
Wow. That's amazing,
but they
Terri.
track everything.
Yeah.
So it's because, so many people don't, you can go into therapy for 2 or 3 years, but nobody's tracking whether you're improving.
Yeah. That's amazing. And the fact that you have, a, doctor of psychology, like there on hand to help people if, they're not on track. And that's even like, that's another incentive to, at least try your app out, because it sounds amazing. Once I get off with you, I'm going to go and download it because
download it.
Yeah, definitely. It's amazing, like the work that you do, and it's work of love. You've put in so much time into it, and effort and tears, and going through your own mental health issues as well. So that's just amazing. I'm in awe of you. So thank you for doing the work that you do.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wow. So
and
amazing.
Also too, if people want to see what kind of results that we get, there's 2 documentaries that have been made on my work. One's Taboo of a Broken Brain, because that's how I felt. It was a taboo subject and I felt broken. And the other one is Blue Rain. It's all about PTSD. So there's 2 documentaries that are on YouTube, and you can watch them for free. They're good watching.
Yeah, I'll put them in the show notes for sure. And yeah, I don't know, I feel called to just maybe just touch on the topic of, the stigma around mental health, because, like yourself, when I finally accepted that I had postnatal depression, because I had a lot of shame, and, going through pharmacy school, being in the healthcare profession, is like, I don't want to be labeled, having depression or anxiety or whatever. I guess I want to just talk about how you got over that shame, or like around having a mental illness.
It took me a long time, because when you're actually psychotic, you're actually insane. And because it was linked to a period, I've had 47 psychotic episodes. So when people come in and say they've had one, I say to them, I've got a gold medal in psychosis. So, I'm on top of the box. But I've actually had situations where I was walking the streets naked. So I was arrested being naked and all that type of stuff. And I had toxic shame. Everything that I experienced, I had to learn to help people get over the different experiences that I never had. I was sheltered. My life was sheltered from all this stuff. I never had toxic shame. Toxic shame is the most debilitating shame. And what actually happened, it was stopping me from being in my true authentic self and living my true authentic life. I was too scared to develop my work, because what happens if people knew about me being naked and walking the streets and being found in the public naked? What happens if they find out, and how will they judge me and all that type of stuff? So I had to write work to get that out of my system, and to stop me defaulting back into those memory files that made it feel debilitating. So, but mental illness is still a taboo. People don't want to talk about it. If they've got it, some people do talk about it. It's better now than what it was many years ago. But I want to say this, but the system doesn't help it. The system keeps you incarcerated into a paradigm where you will never get better. I was told I'd never get better. I was told I was always going to be a mentally ill person. I was told that. I'm high functioning, but I was told that I would never get better. I was put on a disability pension. I was really sick at the time because every 2 weeks I was in a psychiatric hospital. And that went on for about 10, 11 months, and I was actually severely burnt out. So I had to learn what burnout was. You know, I've learned everything that a person can go through except borderline personality disorder, but I understand the actual condition. But the shame is something that people have, and you have to get rid of toxic shame. But toxic shame comes from so many things. You know, toxic shame can come from the fact I had a client who went on drugs, who did 5 years on meth. I didn't pressure him to tell me what his toxic shame was. He was too ashamed of it. But through the work that I did, we released his toxic shame, and he was able to go out there and face his wife without being shamed.
Mm. Wow. Thank you for speaking on that, because I think it's just really important for our audience, for, you know, everyone to know that, you know, there is no shame in it. It's something that's, you know, I mean, you didn't go, hey, I'm going to go have psychosis and I'm going to do this. It's something that just happened organically. And then how do we then reprogram and change our perspective and all, you know, all the things that we can do to then, you know, get rid of the triggers, you know, all those things. So, I mean, I just think it's beautiful that you're like the living example, and the work that you're doing is like, well, I've been through all of that and I'm creating this, like, and I think that's really amazing. And yeah, like I said, I'm just in awe. And, you know, just now not knowing what you've had to go through as well, it's just like, wow, you know, it's fantastic. Like the work that you're doing to end world suffering. And yeah, I'm just a bit speechless, because I think it's just really cool what you're doing.
Do you know, like, I'm not saying that my work is the be all and end all, but it's really brilliant at what it does, and it's highly intelligent, and it makes you feel amazing. But too many people are actually contracting in their lives. And what I mean by contracting is when there's because the stress is so acute, and their toxic thoughts and their toxic emotions are so extreme that they go into a state of survival. When everybody's in a state of survival, you're in that fight, flight, freeze response. And so everybody's triggered into some state of survival at the moment. If you're not in financial survival, you're in spiritual survival. If you're not in spiritual survival, you're in psychological survival. If you're not in psychological survival, you're in emotional survival. If you're not in emotional survival, you're in physical survival. And so at some stage, a lot of people are actually in that state of survival. And because of that, they're not in their true authentic life. They're not living their true authentic self. And they don't have the capacity to actually love people for who they are, and actually have the tolerance for people, because they actually are in a state of survival themselves. So we've got to change the world. And it's not just about shifting the consciousness, but actually getting people filters changed so they can actually just embrace people and love people and actually heal people, so we can heal the planet.
Yeah. When you look at the state of the planet now, it's a lot. I mean, it is a reflection of the inner environment of the people. And, you know, especially in the last, 3 years now with the pandemic and everything. I mean, that is trauma that people have gone through. And, you know, being able to have something, an application that can help people just to, you know, relieve that stress, get rid of the triggers, you know, all the things. It's helpful because, like you say, when we shift our inner environment, then the outer environment. So we're shifting the collective consciousness. Yeah. I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you. Terri, I'm just looking at the time, and I feel like I can talk to you all day, but unfortunately I can't. So I just wanted to ask you what do you want our listeners from our, this conversation we've had to take away with them after listening to this conversation?
Do you know one of the things that I want to, I'd love to, if I could share one nugget that will actually change people's lives, is the fact that, you know, most mental illness is a state of perception. If you go out, you don't have to go and do my app, but do the free stuff. Just experience the free work on my app. It will change your perception and your whole world changes. But if you can go out there and do the work to change your perception, you can change your reality, you change your beliefs, and your life will start, you'll get more access to life. The other thing is, if you're highly stressed, Dan Murphy's not where you have to go. So if you're highly stressed and you don't have capacity for anything outside of survival, you actually have to look at your mental health, not Dan Murphy's.
Yeah. And for our overseas listeners, Dan Murphy's is a bottle shop where you get alcohol, just in case you don't know what it is. You're like, what? Yeah. But
it's a liquor barn. It's a liquor barn.
Yeah, liquor barn. Yeah. Thank you, Terri. And yes, I resonate and agree with everything that you've said. Just, you know, take that time to look after your mental health, because that filters out to everything else in you. So thank you so much for this amazing conversation, Terri. Like I said, I'm just in awe, and I just think what you're doing is great, and I'm going to go and download your app after this. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Terri, if people want to find out more about you, how they can work with you, or more about, you know, all the amazing work that you do, where's the best place to connect with you?
Is actually Terri, Terri, at Blissiree, BLISSIREE.com.
Yep. So that's your email.
Or download the app from the app stores.
Yeah, perfect. I'll have your contact details in the show notes, and also the documentaries that you mentioned before in the show notes, so people can reach out to you and also watch, you know, documentary that's documenting your amazing work. So thank you once again for this beautiful conversation.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.